Chosen 1. The message begins with an assertion that the viewer's attention at this moment is not accidental. It frames the experience as one of timing rather than coincidence, suggesting that individuals often encounter pivotal ideas during periods of internal readiness rather than external planning. From a psychological and behavioral standpoint, such framing is commonly used to help individuals focus, reduce distraction, and engage more deeply with a message. When people believe that a moment carries significance, they are more likely to pause, reflect, and internalize what follows. At the core of this narrative is the concept of alignment. Alignment, in this context, does not refer to a mystical event, but to the synchronization between belief, intention, and action. Many individuals report extended periods of waiting, effort, or prayer, during which progress feels stalled. Research in behavioral science often shows that perceived stagnation is less about lack of effort and more about unresolved internal conflict. When intention and behavior are misaligned, progress appears slow even when activity is constant. The script introduces the idea that the delay experienced by the individual was not due to neglect or inattention, but rather a lack of readiness. In neutral terms, readiness can be understood as the moment when cognitive clarity, emotional regulation, and self-permission converge. Without this convergence, even well-timed opportunities may go unnoticed or unused. This reframing shifts responsibility away from external forces and toward internal preparation, which can be empowering rather than discouraging. A central claim made early in the narrative is that a single, intentional declaration can trigger meaningful change. From a practical standpoint, spoken language plays a significant role in cognitive restructuring. Studies in psychology demonstrate that verbal commitments, when spoken with intention, can reinforce belief systems and influence behavior. This is not because words themselves are inherently transformative, but because they activate internal accountability and focus. The expectation of sudden clarity and responsiveness following such a declaration is framed as a natural consequence of internal alignment. When individuals reach a state of clarity, they tend to notice patterns, opportunities, and information that were previously filtered out by stress or indecision. This phenomenon is well documented in attention theory, where the brain prioritizes information that aligns with current goals and beliefs. The narrative then emphasizes urgency, not as pressure, but as recognition of a unique moment of readiness. Urgency in this context is presented as internal rather than external. It is described as a felt sense that conditions are aligned for action. In practical terms, this aligns with moments when individuals experience reduced hesitation and increased confidence. Often following long periods of uncertainty, the discussion transitions into what is described as a frequency protocol. Though the concept itself can be interpreted through a psychological lens, rather than a ritual or chant, it is described as a structured internal shift. The idea of frequency here functions as a metaphor for mental and emotional state. When stress, fear, or doubt dominate, the nervous system operates in a reactive mode. When clarity and acceptance take precedence, the nervous system shifts toward regulation and stability. This recalibration of the nervous system is central to the message. Modern neuroscience supports the idea that intentional thought patterns and verbal affirmations can influence physiological responses. When individuals adopt a sense of authority over their internal state, the body often responds with reduced anxiety and increased focus. This is not instantaneous for everyone, but for some, the shift can feel immediate and noticeable. The script uses the analogy of tuning an instrument to explain this process. When different aspects of the self-thoughts, emotions, and actions are out of sync, the result is tension and inconsistency. When they are aligned, behavior becomes more fluid and decision-making improves. This metaphor is commonly used in therapeutic context to describe coherence between internal systems. The transformation described is not framed as an external reward, but as the activation of latent capacity. This aligns with the idea that many individuals possess skills, insights, and resilience that remain unused due to fear or self-doubt. When those inhibitions are reduced, capability becomes visible. The narrative positions this moment as an invitation to access that capability consciously. The discussion then addresses why certain concepts or statements may have felt inaccessible in the past. Rather than framing this as prohibition, the script explains it as a matter of readiness. In neutral terms, information or responsibility introduced too early can create confusion rather than growth. This is consistent with educational and developmental psychology, which emphasizes timing in learning and self-awareness. Fear is identified as a central obstacle. Fear, particularly chronic fear, often operates as a stabilizing force that keeps individuals within familiar patterns, even when those patterns are limiting. Systems, habits, and beliefs tend to reinforce themselves when fear is unchallenged. Clarity, by contrast, disrupts these systems by introducing alternative interpretations and choices. The narrative presents clarity as both cognitive and emotional. Knowing something intellectually does not always translate into action. Emotional clarity involves confidence in one's perception and the absence of internal conflict. When clarity emerges at both levels, decision-making becomes more efficient, and hesitation diminishes. The script emphasizes that clarity acts as a form of internal protection. Rather than shielding individuals from difficulty, it reduces the impact of doubt and distraction. This allows attention to remain focused on relevant signals rather than being scattered across competing concerns. As a result, individuals often report feeling more grounded and decisive. Attention is then given to language itself. The words one uses internally and externally shape perception. Language framed as ownership rather than request changes the psychological stance of the speaker. Instead of positioning oneself as passive or dependent, ownership language reinforces agency and responsibility. This shift has been shown to influence motivation and persistence. The narrative divides individuals into three broad categories based on their dominant response patterns: those driven by anxiety, those grounded in belief, and those attentive to patterns and signals. While simplified, this categorization reflects different coping and perception styles recognized in psychology. Each style requires a different approach to growth and change. For individuals dominated by anxiety, the emphasis is on surrendering excessive control. Anxiety often arises from an attempt to predict and manage every outcome. Letting go of this impulse can reduce cognitive load and restore emotional balance. The script encourages such individuals to use intentional language as a way to calm the nervous system and re-establish trust in internal guidance for those who already possess strong belief or trust. The instruction focuses on reinforcement rather than change. Belief, when unexamined, can remain passive. When actively affirmed, it becomes a guiding principle for action. This transition from passive belief to active engagement is critical for sustained progress. The third group, described as those attuned to signs and patterns, is encouraged to combine observation with action. Awareness without response can lead to stagnation. By acting on insights, individuals reinforce their confidence in perception and strengthen their sense of agency. Across all three groups, the message remains consistent. Language used with intention influences internal state, and internal state influences behavior. The authority described is not dominance over others, but responsibility for one's own alignment. This distinction is important, as it frames power as self-regulation rather than control. The script clarifies that this process is not magical in nature. It does not bypass effort or reality. Instead, it reframes engagement with reality through clarity and acceptance. Authority, in this sense, refers to self-ownership. When individuals accept responsibility for their internal state, they reduce reliance on external validation or permission. This form of authority operates quietly. It does not require announcement or display. Its effects are observed in consistency, confidence, and reduced reactivity. By minimizing ego-driven responses, individuals can respond to situations with greater precision and calm. The narrative explains that declarations made from this position are not negotiations with circumstance, but acknowledgments of readiness. This framing reduces internal conflict and accelerates follow-through. When individuals believe they are ready, behavior often aligns with that belief. As the internal recalibration takes hold, the script describes immediate shifts in perception. While external circumstances may not change instantly, the experience of those circumstances does. Reduced fear allows for clearer assessment, and clearer assessment leads to better decisions. The dissolution of ego described is not the loss of identity, but the reduction of defensive patterns built around fear and comparison. Without these patterns, individuals often experience increased authenticity and presence. This state supports resilience and adaptability rather than vulnerability. The message emphasizes that such moments of alignment are rare because they require both readiness and attention. When ignored, the opportunity passes without consequence, but when engaged, it can redefine internal priorities. This reinforces the importance of conscious participation rather than passive consumption. The first part of the narrative concludes by framing the moment as a recalibration rather than a climax. The changes described are foundational, affecting how future experiences are interpreted and acted upon. The emphasis remains on internal responsibility, clarity, and sustained alignment rather than immediate external outcomes. As the recalibration described earlier settles in, its effects begin to express themselves not as dramatic events, but as consistent internal shifts. One of the most immediate changes is the way fear is experienced. Fear does not disappear entirely, nor is it presented as something to be eliminated. Instead, its role changes. Rather than acting as a governing force that dictates decisions, fear becomes informational. It signals areas that require attention, preparation, or discernment, but it no longer overrides clarity or authority. This shift is significant because much of human behavior is shaped by avoidance. When fear dominates, individuals often delay decisions, overanalyze choices, or remain in situations that feel familiar but unfulfilling. With alignment, fear loses its capacity to paralyze. The nervous system no longer interprets uncertainty as danger by default. Instead, it learns that uncertainty can coexist with safety, allowing forward movement even without complete guarantees. Another consequence of this internal reset is a change in identity structures. Many people operate through what psychologists describe as performance identities. These are roles adopted to meet expectations, gain approval, or avoid conflict. While functional in some contexts, they can become restrictive when mistaken for the core self. As alignment deepens, these identities begin to loosen. Individuals feel less compelled to justify their choices or explain their direction to others. This reduction in explanation is not withdrawal or indifference. It reflects a growing sense of internal validation. When decisions are grounded in clarity, the need for external confirmation diminishes. Energy previously spent defending choices becomes available for execution and reflection. This reallocation of energy often results in improved focus and efficiency, as attention is no longer divided between action and self-defense. The narrative emphasizes that this moment does not require immediate outward expression. Silence following alignment is framed as intentional rather than passive. From a practical standpoint, silence allows cognitive and emotional integration. New beliefs and perspectives require time to stabilize. Premature disclosure can invite external doubt or pressure before the internal framework is secure. Silence also serves as a period of observation. Individuals begin to notice subtle changes in how they perceive situations and how others respond to them. Interactions may feel less charged, decisions less exhausting, and boundaries easier to maintain. These are indicators that the nervous system is adapting to a new baseline of regulation. A key theme introduced is the concept of safety in power. Many individuals associate power with conflict, responsibility with stress, and authority with exposure. As a result, they unconsciously avoid stepping fully into roles that require leadership or decisiveness. The recalibration described reframes power as stability rather than threat. When authority is internal and aligned, it does not provoke tension. It reduces it. This is reflected physiologically. A regulated nervous system supports steady breathing, balanced heart rate, and improved cognitive flexibility. Tasks that once triggered anxiety become manageable. Challenges are approached with curiosity rather than resistance. This does not eliminate difficulty, but it alters the subjective experience of difficulty. The script acknowledges that internal change often precedes external evidence. This gap can be uncomfortable, especially for those accustomed to validating progress through visible results. However, this sequence is consistent with many models of change. Internal beliefs and behaviors must shift before external circumstances can respond. Expecting immediate external confirmation can undermine the process by reintroducing doubt. During this period, patience becomes essential. Patience is not framed as waiting passively, but as maintaining alignment without forcing outcomes. Trust in the process allows individuals to remain consistent rather than reactive. Over time, opportunities, relationships, and conditions begin to align with the new internal state. Relief is described as one of the earliest signs of successful recalibration. This relief is not dependent on resolution of all problems. It emerges from reduced internal conflict. When clarity replaces confusion, mental effort decreases. The mind stops cycling through hypothetical scenarios, freeing cognitive resources for present moment engagement. As alignment stabilizes, individuals often notice changes in how they relate to others. Relationships that relied on imbalance, excessive accommodation, or unspoken resentment may feel strained or irrelevant. Conversely, interactions grounded in mutual respect and clarity tend to strengthen. This is not presented as loss, but as realignment. Decision-making becomes more straightforward. Instead of weighing options through fear of consequences, individuals evaluate choices based on coherence with their values and direction. This shift reduces decision fatigue and increases confidence, even when outcomes are uncertain. The narrative returns to the idea of ownership versus hope. Hope is described as anticipatory and externalized, while ownership is immediate and internal. This distinction is critical. Hope can sustain motivation, but it can also delay action if it substitutes for responsibility. Ownership, by contrast, assumes readiness and capacity, prompting movement. Language plays a reinforcing role here. Statements framed as declarations strengthen commitment. This does not imply inflexibility, but rather clarity of intent. When intent is clear, adjustments can be made without undermining direction. The instruction of restraint is revisited, emphasizing that not every internal shift requires public articulation. Modern culture often encourages constant sharing, but not all processes benefit from exposure. Protection of emerging clarity allows it to mature without distortion. The script also addresses the misconception that alignment eliminates effort. Effort remains necessary, but it becomes more efficient. Energy is no longer dissipated through internal resistance or misaligned goals. Actions are fewer but more effective. As fear loses dominance, intuition becomes more accessible. Intuition here is not portrayed as mystical insight, but as pattern recognition informed by experience and attention. When mental noise decreases, subtle cues become noticeable. These cues guide timing, pacing, and prioritization. The recalibrated state supports adaptability. Rather than clinging to rigid plans, individuals respond dynamically to changing conditions. This flexibility is a hallmark of resilience and is closely associated with psychological well-being. The narrative underscores that this process is cumulative. Each aligned decision reinforces the next. Consistency builds confidence, and confidence supports further alignment. Over time, this creates a stable trajectory rather than sporadic bursts of motivation. Importantly, the message avoids framing this state as exclusive or elitist. While described as rare, it is rare due to the level of self-honesty and responsibility required, not because it is inaccessible. Anyone willing to engage consciously can experience similar recalibration. The closing portion of this part emphasizes integration. Alignment is not an event to be repeated endlessly, but a foundation to be maintained. The goal is sustainable clarity, not constant activation. This requires ongoing awareness, reflection, and adjustment. As the recalibration becomes embedded, individuals begin to operate with less friction. Challenges are addressed directly, boundaries are maintained calmly, and progress feels steady rather than forced. This marks the transition from internal activation to lived application. The narrative prepares to conclude by highlighting that the relief and clarity experienced are indicators of a deeper restructuring. External validation may follow, but it is no longer required to sustain momentum. The alignment itself becomes the reference point. This sets the stage for the final section, which will consolidate the implications of this process and outline how sustained alignment shapes long-term direction, responsibility, and engagement with life beyond the initial moment of recalibration. As the process of alignment moves from activation into continuity, its most important outcome becomes sustainability. The purpose of this internal recalibration is not to create a single moment of intensity, but to establish a stable foundation from which daily life is approached differently. What ultimately defines this shift is not how strongly it is felt in one night, but how consistently it shapes perception, choice, and behavior over time. One of the clearest long-term effects is the change in how responsibility is understood. Responsibility here is not burden or pressure. It is ownership. When individuals operate from alignment, they stop outsourcing responsibility to timing, circumstances, or other people. This does not mean ignoring external realities, but engaging with them from a position of agency rather than dependency. Life is no longer something that happens to them. It is something they participate in consciously. This sense of ownership naturally reshapes priorities. Activities, relationships, and commitments that once consumed energy without providing direction begin to feel unsustainable. This is not because they are objectively wrong, but because they no longer align with the internal framework that has been established. As a result, individuals may begin simplifying their lives, not through force, but through clarity. What matters becomes obvious. What does not gradually falls away. Another long-term implication is how setbacks are interpreted. In a misaligned state, setbacks often feel personal and destabilizing. They trigger doubt, self-criticism, or the urge to retreat. In an aligned state, setbacks are processed as information rather than judgment. They are assessed, learned from, and integrated without undermining confidence. This shift dramatically reduces emotional volatility and supports resilience. The narrative emphasizes that alignment does not guarantee ease, but it does reduce unnecessary struggle. Struggle often comes from resistance to reality, to uncertainty, or to responsibility. When resistance decreases, effort becomes more effective. Even difficult tasks feel manageable because they are no longer amplified by internal conflict. Over time, this clarity begins to influence long-term direction. Goals are no longer chosen reactively or in response to external expectations. They emerge from an internal understanding of capacity and purpose. This does not require complete certainty about outcomes. It requires commitment to direction. When direction is clear, adjustments can be made without losing momentum. The recalibration also alters the relationship with time. Urgency is replaced by intentional pacing. Individuals no longer feel compelled to rush decisions out of fear of missing opportunities, nor do they delay action out of doubt. Timing becomes more intuitive. Actions are taken when readiness is present, not when pressure demands it. This has a noticeable effect on mental health. Reduced rumination, lower baseline anxiety, and improved emotional regulation are common outcomes when internal alignment is maintained. The mind is less cluttered with hypothetical scenarios and more engaged with present realities. This supports clearer thinking and better problem solving. Another important aspect of sustained alignment is boundaries. Boundaries become easier to set and maintain because they are no longer framed as rejection or conflict. They are expressions of clarity. When individuals understand their limits and priorities, boundaries feel natural rather than defensive. This improves both personal well-being and relational quality. The narrative also addresses the temptation to seek repeated activation. There is a tendency, especially in modern self-improvement culture, to chase constant breakthroughs. However, alignment is not meant to be continually reinitiated. It is meant to be lived. Repetition without integration can become avoidance. True growth comes from applying clarity consistently, not from repeatedly seeking intense experiences. Silence remains an important practice beyond the initial moment. Silence here does not mean isolation, but discernment. It involves choosing when to speak, what to share, and with whom. This protects clarity and prevents dilution of intention. Over time, communication becomes more precise because it is grounded in understanding rather than impulse. The recalibrated state also affects how individuals respond to external systems work, social structures, and expectations. Rather than feeling dominated by these systems, they engage selectively. They understand where participation is necessary and where autonomy can be preserved. This balanced engagement reduces burnout and increases satisfaction. Importantly, alignment supports ethical clarity. Decisions are evaluated not only for personal benefit, but for coherence with values. This does not imply moral perfection, but conscious choice. When values are clear, compromises are made intentionally rather than unconsciously. This reduces regret and internal tension. As clarity deepens, intuition becomes more reliable. This intuition is not separate from reason. It complements it. It reflects accumulated experience, observation, and self-awareness. When individuals trust this internal guidance, they navigate complexity more effectively, even when information is incomplete. The narrative emphasizes that this state is self-reinforcing. Each aligned choice strengthens confidence. Each moment of clarity reinforces the next. Over time, alignment becomes the default rather than the exception. This is when the internal shift fully translates into lived reality. External changes often follow gradually. Opportunities may emerge that match the new internal state. Relationships may evolve to reflect clearer boundaries and mutual respect. Work may become more meaningful or more efficiently managed. These changes are not forced. They are attracted through consistency. It is also acknowledged that moments of doubt may still arise. Alignment does not eliminate human vulnerability. However, doubt no longer dominates. It is addressed rather than avoided. This prevents regression into old patterns and supports continued growth. The final emphasis is on stewardship of this clarity. Alignment is not something to prove or display. It is something to maintain. This requires honesty, reflection, and ongoing responsibility. When individuals commit to this stewardship, the benefits compound over time. Ultimately, the transformation described is not about becoming someone new, but about removing what obscured what was already present. The recalibration reveals capability, insight, and resilience that were always available, but previously constrained by fear or distraction. The process concludes not with an ending, but with a continuation. Alignment becomes the lens through which future experiences are interpreted and navigated. Life does not become predictable, but it becomes coherent. Challenges remain, but they are met with clarity rather than confusion. In this way, the moment that initiated the recalibration serves as a reference point rather than a peak. It marks the transition from reactive living to intentional engagement. From that point forward, progress is measured not by intensity, but by consistency. This is the lasting impact of alignment, a steady, grounded way of moving through the world with awareness, responsibility, and confidence. Not driven by urgency, not constrained by fear, but guided by clarity that continues to unfold with time. As this message reaches its conclusion, the most important step now shifts from listening to engagement. Information alone does not create change. Understanding alone does not transform outcomes. The true value of this message lies in what you choose to do with it next. This is where reflection becomes action, and awareness becomes direction. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to acknowledge why. Resonance is not accidental. It signals alignment between what you are hearing and what you are already sensing internally. Pay attention to that signal. It often appears quietly, not as excitement, but as recognition. That recognition is an invitation to pause, reflect, and respond intentionally rather than moving on without integration. Start by grounding this message in your own experience. Ask yourself where clarity is currently emerging in your life and where resistance still exists. This is not about judgment or self-criticism. It is about honest assessment. Growth begins when you are willing to observe your patterns without defending them. That willingness alone creates space for meaningful change. If you found value here, consider supporting the continuation of this work by engaging with the channel. Subscribing is not simply a digital action. It is a signal of commitment to ongoing reflection and learning. Each future message builds on the same foundation of clarity, responsibility, and conscious engagement. Staying connected ensures you continue receiving content designed to support long-term understanding rather than momentary motivation. Liking the video is another simple but meaningful step. It helps this message reach others who may be searching for clarity but have not yet found the language to describe it. Visibility matters. When thoughtful content is supported, it becomes easier for more people to access perspectives that encourage awareness rather than distraction. Sharing the video is an even more intentional action. If you know someone who may benefit from this message, consider passing it along. Not as advice, not as correction, but as an invitation. Let them engage with it in their own way and at their own pace. Often, the most impactful support we offer others is access to perspective, not pressure. The comment section is also an important space for engagement. If something stood out to you, write it down. Articulating insight helps anchor it. When you put understanding into words, it moves from abstract thought into conscious awareness. You do not need to be eloquent or certain. Authentic reflection is more valuable than polished responses. You may also find it helpful to return to this message at a later time. Understanding deepens with repetition. What feels clear today may reveal additional layers tomorrow. Saving the video allows you to revisit it when your perspective has shifted, or when you are navigating new circumstances that Require RECLIBRATION. Beyond digital engagement. The most important call to action is internal. Begin applying what you have recognized here. Observe your daily choices. Notice where you act from clarity and where you act from habit. Small adjustments made consistently create far more impact than dramatic changes made briefly. Consider setting aside intentional time for silence and reflection. This does not require isolation or withdrawal from responsibility. It simply means creating moments without distraction where you can check in with your internal state. Alignment strengthens when attention is not constantly fragmented. Pay attention to how you manage your energy. Notice which activities support focus and which drain it unnecessarily. This awareness allows you to make informed decisions rather than reactive ones. Over time, these decisions shape your experience more than any external circumstance. If this message encouraged you to reconsider boundaries, begin practicing them gently but consistently. Boundaries are not walls. They are frameworks that protect clarity. You do not need to explain or justify every decision. Clear choices speak for themselves. Another important step is patience. Integration takes time. There may be moments when old patterns resurface. This does not indicate failure. It indicates learning. Each moment of awareness strengthens your ability to respond differently next time. Progress is measured by honesty, not perfection. If you are seeking continued guidance, stay engaged with future content. Each message is designed to build on previous insights while addressing new aspects of clarity, growth, and responsibility. Consistent exposure to thoughtful perspectives reinforces alignment and reduces the pull of distraction-driven narratives. You may also consider journaling as a companion practice. Writing helps clarify thought and emotion. It creates a record of growth that can be revisited when doubt arises. Even brief reflections can support long-term understanding. Most importantly, remember that transformation is not about becoming someone else. It is about returning to what is already present beneath conditioning, fear, and noise. Every step you take toward clarity strengthens your ability to navigate life with intention rather than reaction. If this message supported you, let that support continue through action. Engage with the content. Reflect on the insights. Apply them gradually and consistently. Encourage others through sharing rather than persuasion. Protect your clarity through boundaries and discernment. This channel exists to support sustained understanding, not temporary inspiration. Your engagement helps shape that mission and ensures these conversations continue to reach those who need them. Each interaction contributes to a growing space focused on awareness, responsibility, and conscious living. Thank you for taking the time to listen, reflect, and engage. The next step is yours. Whether it begins with a comment, a subscription, a shared reflection, or a quiet internal commitment, what matters is that the insight does not end here. Carry it forward with intention and allow clarity to guide your next choice.